that work?
I can see it.
Yay!
Hey,
Sorry.
hey,
Hi,
Jim.
I'm James Patterson, and I'm wearing my Caitlin Clark hat, which she gave me, number 22. Caitlin is a great basketball player. Used to play for Iowa, and now she's playing for, I think, the Indiana Fever. So I'm very pumped for this, but not as pumped as I am to talk with Tori, who I'm a huge, huge, huge fan, and she has a new book out this week. Worst case scenario, which you've all heard about by now, I'm sure you wouldn't be here. So let's start here, Tori. Just a thought. You were a bookseller for a while, okay?
Yeah.
So you're in your store out in Phoenix area, and how would you tell what would you tell people about worst case scenario, which I've read and loved, by the way. But what would you tell people? You as a bookstore person, you're out there and tell them why this book?
Jim, that is such a good question. I was a former bookseller, Changing Hands bookstore. No one has ever asked me, and I've never thought of that. How would I hand sell my own book? How would I pitch my
Yeah.
own book if a
Uh-huh.
customer came in? That's such a good question. I think, my leading question was always, well, what are you interested in? What are you feeling like? What do you need? Because readers.
I love books where I just can't stop reading them, Tori, as your customer at the store. Yeah, that's the kind of book I'm looking for.
So you're looking for an escape. Look, I'm going to recommend an author. Her name is TJ Newman. She writes aviation thrillers. She was a former flight attendant. She flew for 10 years.
Wow,
Now
okay.
she's writing aviation thrillers. And if you are looking for just an escape, something that just catches you and just keeps you turning pages, and you have to know how it ends and can't put it down, and you just want to get away, read her books, because they're terrifying. So you need to finish it from that way, but they're really about the heart. They're really about relationships and about people. So you're going to feel and you're going to be scared. Check her out.
An interesting thing about hand selling or just talking to people, our friends about it. And you always hear this thing, and it comes up in book reviews sometimes. This is a guilty pleasure. Why should reading a book be a guilty pleasure? Do you have any thoughts on that? Why would that happen? I don't, books are never, I think if somebody comes into Barnes and Noble, somebody should put a nice star on the side of their cheek. Or if you go to the library, put a star on the side. This is a good thing. This isn't guilty. This is a pleasure.
I could not, every cell of my existence agrees with you. I think that people should read what they want to read, and writers should write what they want to write. I think this whole notion that something is like real literature or not real literature, or fiction versus just literary fiction. It's like, it's all fine. All of it is great. And there's books and stories for all emotions and all types of reading. One is not better or worse than the other. And I mean, you and I
Well,
write.
some are better, and some are worse.
Well, that's subjective.
But a lot of them are really good at that. I mean, Charles Dickens, is he a guilty? I guess probably back at some point he was a guilty pleasure. Sherlock Holmes, is that a guilty? I guess a little bit for some people. Uh,
I just, yeah, it's just such a bummer when people say that, because it's like, why should something that brings you joy and happiness and that you enjoy, or it scares you or makes you feel, why should that make you feel guilty? What is wrong
I
with
don't.
that?
I'm over the guilt personally. So anyway, getting back to worst case scenario, one of the things that comes up in the book is this notion that if you talked about Chernobyl as a level 7 kind of, that this would be a level 8. And I think you refined the idea talking to a pilot about this kind of thing happening. How did that work out?
Yeah, the whole concept for the book came about from a conversation that I had with a pilot when I was doing research for my first book, Falling. And I would ask pilots lots of questions about, the nuts and bolts of flying, the policies, the procedures. But I would also talk to I'm a writer and I'm a storyteller, so I wanted to know about the emotional side of being a pilot, the psychological side of being a pilot. So the question that I would always ask the pilots is, what's your worst fear? As a
Hmm.
pilot, what is your
Hmm.
worst? And one day I had a pilot who looked me dead in the eye and said, my worst fear is a commercial airliner crashing into a nuclear power plant.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I I
Yeah,
honestly
that'd be
thought it was,
bad.
yeah, it'd be
I have it
bad,
right
but
up the
I,
river from me. I think they just closed it down, but it's still scary. Yeah.
even if they decommissioned it, it's still storing nuclear waste. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
they're everywhere. They're all over the country. The
Yeah.
largest nuclear power plant in the country is less than an hour from my front door, which was a really fun fact to realize as I'm writing this book. But
Yeah.
when he told
Well,
me that,
France handles them well. I will say they handle their power plants well, and it's worked out very well for them. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, well, when he told me this, I sort of, blew him off and I was like, come on, that's not real. Like we live in a post 9/11 world. Like they've shown us that, these structures have been fortified and they understand that could be a threat. And therefore they've done what needs to be done to ensure that this would not be what you're worried about. And he listens to me tell all this. And when I finish saying everything, he looks at me again and he says, and that's exactly what they want you to think.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah,
Good.
exactly.
Good,
Exactly.
good chapter ending. Good chapter
Yeah,
ending. So
exactly. It
I
was a
wrote a
great
book,
punch.
completed a Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton is starting the book, Eruption. And there's two clocks. A lot of books you pick up, there's one clock ticking. They have one idea and there it is. And that's fine. And then with Eruption, there are two clocks. There's possible, Hawaii could get destroyed, but there's something even worse buried on the island. Now, in worst case scenario, you got about four clocks ticking, at least four. So tell us a little bit about all these ticking clocks. You got what's going on at the power plant, and what else is going on there? And
Yeah,
by the way, this isn't depressing stuff, folks. In case it's really fun reading. It's neat, and you keep turning those pages in a good way. But I'm sorry. So all these clocks are ticking, Tori.
Jim, I appreciate that disclaimer because I feel like anytime I give an interview and I go into like depth on like the genuine and valid fears and how horrible it can get, I always am like, but the book's really hopeful and it's really
We're
fun.
not going there. We're not going there. Yeah, yeah. No, I see
Yeah.
people popping up about getting afraid to go on planes and stuff. Don't be afraid. This is not going to. I don't know if I'd read this on a plane, but other than that, I'd read it on a plane too. What the heck?
I always say that they're great to read on planes because it makes it like a Disneyland ride. Like you've got, the seat
Uh-huh.
shaking with turbulence and all the sights and the smells. So I always suggest that. But the parallel storylines and the ticking clocks that you're saying, which yes, you are exceptional. I've gone to school quite a bit on your work of understanding sort of the pacing and how to
Yeah,
keep
my lawyers will be talking to your lawyers. Don't worry. Yeah.
So I'm, you've been a huge help in that way, but I wanted those parallel storylines because it's hard sometimes to conceptualize when you're dealing with something as big as, like the fate of humanity and potentially an event happening that would be so large that we just would never recover from it. When you're dealing with something that enormous and sort of the time restrictions that go along with that, it's almost too much to comprehend because it's just too big. So in the way with the clock and then also with the storylines, I brought it smaller and I made a secondary storyline of a rescue mission happening on a bridge to save one life. And
Hmm.
and I sort of toggled back and forth between them as a reminder for myself and for the reader of this is what it's about. This is what we're working so hard for. This is what we're so afraid of. This is what we're sacrificing for is yes, the collective whole, but the collective is the individual. And
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so it just became this nice way of kind of marking sort of as that clock is ticking what that means and
Yeah,
how
I think you have the concept in there as well that and this isn't totally accurate, but thousands of lives are statistics, but one life in jeopardy is a tragedy, and it's crazy, but there's a lot of truth to that. I think for
yeah.
for for most people.
Yeah, I think it's just it gets too big. It gets too big. And that's why, I think the danger of writing books as big as the stories that I tell, these massive action adventures is, it is explosions, it is car chases, it is plane crashes, it is nuclear meltdowns, it's all of these things,
And
but
that's
that
just the first chapter of her book, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes, it's not a spoiler exactly to say that by the end of the 5th page, the plane has crashed. So this isn't about a plane crash. It's about what happens
Not
after.
about a plane crash, right? We've done that, which brings us actually backwards a little bit. If anybody hasn't read Falling and Drowning, those are the first two. Those are spectacular too. They're really, really. Falling got. That's where I came to the conclusion that this person, Tori, as innocent as she looks, is really a dangerous competitor for me. And I have a book out now, so how brave of me to be out here pitching your book. But I will because it is so good. So anyway, but somewhere along the way, earlier on, you were a starving artist and a theater major, right?
I was, and
Going back.
yes, I have to stop you there though. I'm in New York, and it brings up all
Oh, okay.
of memories of when I was a struggling actor and was getting rejected and rejected and rejected and rejected. And to be here, it's a surreal moment, Jim. I have to tell you, to be here now in New York, where I failed so spectacularly, and to be on a Zoom call now with you, and to hear you say that you've not just read my book, you've read my backlist, and that you enjoyed it, and that to be like a peer with you, I'm just going to take this for a second and really kind of hold this one close, because this is a big deal to me. This is
I
pretty.
think that's really important to do that too. And I don't know if people can identify with that, but one of the blessings I'm in New York State right now, up the river, up the Hudson River, and I grew up close to here, and I still see the world through the eye, and I consider it a blessing. I see the world through the eyes of this kid from Newburgh, New York, and I'm right with you. Wow, I'm on BNN, and I'm talking to a famous author, and it's cool. I like it. I really get a kick out of it, and I'm never blasé about it. And I think that I think sometimes some of the actors and whatever that I meet, they get kind of blasé or a little irritated. No, this is good. This is fun. This is neat. Up to a point. I guess if you're, Brad Pitt or something, and people are mobbing you every time you go to a restaurant, that could be irritating. But that doesn't happen to me, so I'm cool with it. Yeah.
That's sort of the awesome aspect of being like a celebrity in the literary word, is some people who have read every single one of your books, maybe they don't see the back flap copy and they don't see your author picture. It's like this, you get to be like this massive celebrity that still gets to go grocery shopping.
Quick story. I'm in a little Italian restaurant, and my wife and we're waiting, and then they finally take us down the aisle to our seats. Tiny, this is in Florida. And this woman pops up and she goes, I know you, I know you. I go, I'm trying to be nice. And she goes, you sold us our life insurance. And that's, yeah, okay. No,
Did you own it? Did you say sure?
No, I will never sell anybody life insurance in South Florida. I'm sorry. Or hurricane insurance. I'm not selling that stuff. But no, I did not sell your life insurance to you. So anyway,
who you actually
starving
were?
artist back in New York, and in those days you're like taking babysitting jobs and well, we won't get into all the stuff you were doing, but and then and also, so your next thing is then you go to the bookstore and you start. Oh no, you become a flight attendant. So what happens when you finally get your book written and you send out your letters? What happens then? You're out to agents and stuff.
It was like New York 2.0. If I stood, in rooms and audition rooms, here in New York, singing and dancing, and then standing in front of a table of casting directors and producers and having them look up and go, next. Like, if that's what it was in New York, it's exactly what I experienced when I started querying agents. I sent my work out, and rejection after rejection after rejection, and 41 in a row, came back with next. And
I only got 31 for my first book, so
that's I just can't. I
know it is heartbreaking. People don't understand it. It's hard. Any of the arts, being an actor, I think is worse because you're doing it to your face. With the books, at least you're getting a piece of paper or an email or something,
But a rejection is still a rejection, and it hurts. And I hope anybody listening to that hears both of us say James Patterson was rejected 31 times. Like, keep going if you're doing something. Like,
100%. Exactly. Yeah. And then And the amazing thing is, and then and this book that they're rejecting, and who are these people? Also, I'd like to know. They should like quit their jobs like today. If you're watching and you were one of those people, like quit right now because you have no sense. So and then you finally found somebody who did like your book, and that was
Shane Salerno, my 42nd submission was my one and only yes. And that was to Shane Salerno of the Story Factory, which funnily enough, he did not know that he was my 42nd agent submission. I sort of omitted that because you're definitely not going to tell this new agent that took you on. By the way, 41 other people did not want this. Nobody wanted this. Glad you do. So I kept
yeah, right.
and
You
it
kept that
wasn't
out of it. Yeah.
yeah, I kept that quiet. And it wasn't until I had written the acknowledgement section of my first book and submitted it to him, and I sent it off to him in an email, and he calls back like 5 minutes later, and he's just like, "You submitted this to 41 other agents before me?" And I was like,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah,
No, you were
like,
number 42 on my list. That's right, Shane. Shane
yeah."
is great because he handles the Crichton estate with Sherry Crichton, and so I like him a lot. And one of the great things about Sherry about Shane is he deals with his clients like they're his babies. He's so protective and enthusiastic about your work, and that's part of it. I saw a wonderful article in USA Today about you. I think it was yesterday, right? That
Mhm.
was cool about this book. Worst case. Now, worst case scenario, has that been sold yet out in Hollywood?
No, it has not. My first book's had my first book,
So it's still
Falling.
available, folks.
Still available, yes, yeah. My first book is with Universal, and
Okay.
the exciting sort of note there is that I'm writing the adaptation for that, which is wild. I mean, just
Uh-huh.
an
Uh-huh.
education like I did not believe before I started that process, and an education that completely changed me as a novelist. It totally changed the way that I write
No,
books.
don't let them change you. You know what you're doing and they don't. Do not let them change you. Trust me, they do not, I'll give you an example. The Women's Murder Club out there, and we were preparing, the script, and of course screenwriters there. And they give the screenwriter like 20 pages of notes, which is crazy. And then a very smart exec who was involved, and he said, "Look, I'm gonna give you one note. Make Lindsay Boxer, make us love Lindsay Boxer, and I will greenlight the show. That's simple, and that's what you need from people. That kind of note, which you can really write to, not 41. They give you notes. In the book business, it's the kind of stuff that you would deal with a copy editor. These little footnotes and all that stuff, and you don't want that when you're trying to get this steam engine going forward and da 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 da. But don't listen to them. Don't change. Don't change for Hollywood.
It's good
Look what it did
advice.
to Fitzgerald. F. Scott. I mean,
Yeah,
it ruined him. Yeah, be
yeah.
careful.
It is good advice. And
They
that's
tried to kill Faulkner. It didn't work.
yeah, it's something that it's good advice to remember, as I mean, I've only
People
written.
are saying, don't change, don't change.
Thank you. I hear you. I hear you. But it's that fine line between like staying true to yourself and your artistic voice and
Yeah,
your voice as a writer, but then
yeah,
also understanding, well, yeah, but I'm not perfect. I have everything to learn, and taking that
yeah.
criticism and understanding. Shane actually has a really good way of looking at this. He says, listen to the note, but not necessarily the correction, because oftentimes the note
Uh-huh.
will be
I don't
right.
know. They shouldn't be writing it for you. The notes are fine.
Right.
And the other thing is ultimately actors actually have to go out there and we have to shoot this stuff and we have a budget and there is that part to it too. Some
Absolutely.
of the
There
stuff
is
they go, oh my God, this scene would cost $11 million, just this scene. So this isn't working for us. It worked in the book because it didn't cost anything. It was just a paper and the whatever. Yeah.
exactly, which when I realized that, which seems fairly obvious, but if you're not a movie producer, of course, you're not thinking in terms of budget for a scene. You're a writer just
Mhm.
thinking, but that's what I mean is like little things like that just opened up
Uh-huh.
my perspective on the whole endeavor. And the way that it changed me as a novelist primarily is just that it sort of perched this relentless editor on my shoulder saying, is that necessary, right? Because in a book, you've got 300 some pages to tell your story. In a script, you only have 100. There's just an economy of words in a script that is necessary, that forces this relentless focus on what is actually happening in this scene. What is the actor, the character saying? Is it important? And if it's not important, then it's cut. And when I was writing novels, when I wrote Worst Case Scenario, that editor kind of stayed there. And it was kind of just this voice that was just like, what's happening? We've lost the thread. We don't have time for that. Focus.
You can write a book and it could be a $500 million production. It doesn't matter. It's okay. Exactly. We can do whatever we want.
Exactly.
Yeah, which is very cool. And so you're doing it now for Falling. That's the one you're writing the screenplay for? Okay. Is that with Paul Greengrass?
Drowning is with Paul Greengrass.
Drowning.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
So
okay.
Drowning is with Warner Brothers.
Paul Greengrass is great. He's great. He actually didn't he do one? He did the one with the plane that got shot down on 9/11, or the one that was going
Shanksville, Pennsylvania, United.
Yeah. That was he's very good. He obviously likes to do things with planes. He's a very good director. Yeah, that's lucky for you.
Phenomenal. And the adaptation of that, I'm not adapting that, but it is. I'm incredibly thrilled that the adaptation is being handled by Steve Kloves, who is. Best known, incredible resume, but is best known for adapting the Harry Potter novels. He did all but one of them. And just knowing
he works some magic into the screenplay. They just do what they feel like doing, which is cool. Yeah. Here's the funny thing though, Ben, you can work with this on Steve Kloves. Imagine if Steve Kloves wrote this very successful movie, okay, about that Falling started with him. Is he Falling or the other one?
Drowning.
He's drowning. I said, imagine, but he started it, and he wrote it his own way. And then you came in and wrote a novel based on his movie, but you wrote it whatever the hell you wanted to make up. How would he feel about that, with you changing all this stuff, right? Just okay, Steve. Let's see what you think of that.
He
didn't change much with Harry Potter though, because they knew that would, people would really get irritated if they changed a lot of Harry Potter.
I think the fact that we have a writer who took one of the most globally recognized and cherished franchises in the literary world, he took that and was able to adapt it into a set of movies that is as globally cherished and loved. And yes, of course, movies and books, they have to be different, but he maintained the spirit of the books.
100%. Yeah.
Very loyal to that world, knowing that, he just knocked it out of the park. And I cannot even imagine the magnitude of pressure that comes with adapting something that big. I could not be in better hands. I could not be in better hands.
So people are in B&N and they're walking around and whatever, if they go in the stores, which I love to touch the books and stuff. And they're going to buy, they don't have to, but they tell people. That's the other thing. The people who are listening probably are all going to buy it, but you got to tell other people. That's the other piece of our bargain here. And but when you go into B&N, what don't they know about the booksellers there? What don't they understand about how hard they work and all that, knowing from your just working at a bookstore?
Absolutely. It is hard work. And I think people also don't know that most of them are writers. Most booksellers are writers themselves. That's why we work there. That's why, we love being surrounded by stories and by people that want to talk about stories and the written word. It's a hard job. It's a thankless job. It's also a little bit like being a therapist, because when you're hand selling someone, you're oftentimes giving someone a book that is going to change them. That's why we write. That's why we do what we do, right?
I wrote a book, A Secret Life of Booksellers and Librarians, and interviewed a lot of booksellers and librarians and whatever. And one of the big joys in their lives, most of their lives, is that thing about recommending to people, and then people having come back and say, "Oh, thank you so much. I love that book." That's a real joy in their lives. What people don't realize is how hard the work is. And I remember one of the bookstore owners say, says that when she would interview people, she would say, yeah, I know you like to read books, but do you like to clean toilets? Because that's a piece of the puzzle here, which, so I need people that are going to sort of work hard and it is hard work and bringing those books in and taking them out every day or every week. That's really hard work too.
It is. And as a writer also, it's like, look, we can write the best book that we can, and we can get with a great publishing company, and we can get the books into the market, and we can market and advertise as well as we can. But the booksellers are sort of like the last person to get the baton, right? They are the person that gets that book, all the editing, all the drafts, all the publishing, everything, all the shipping, all of that is put in their hands, and they take the baton and pass it to the reader. And it's such a crucial component of the equation that I feel like just doesn't get recognized enough, because it's like they're the person that says, I've got a book for you. I know what you're gonna love. And it's just it's crucial, and I'm so grateful for
Yeah,
the
no,
way
they're
they get
great.
not just my book,
With
but any book into the right
yeah,
hands.
with worst case scenario going back there, tell us about, and most writers answer this differently. Your process when you're writing worst case scenario in terms of the research or the outlining or however, how do you do it?
So with Falling, I definitely had no idea what I was doing. I'd never written a story that big, and I sort of pantsed it. I was a pantser for that one, and I just wrote it, and it took nearly 40 drafts to get right and took years and years and years to do.
Don't do it that way, folks. Right? People that want it, don't do it that way.
I've converted. I'm now a plotter. There are now deadlines, as you know. I now understand that world very well. So I'm now a plotter. And the way my typical process is, once I sort of settle on this is the idea, then I just research deep dive. I just get in and absorb and take in as much as I can.
Do you research before you do your outline or whatever? Do you have an outline?
I do. Oh, yes.
Okay.
I don't start a project unless I've got like a 50, 60 page outline ready to go, to where I just sit down at the computer and go, okay, chapter 1, I reread my notes and the outline and go, okay, that's what it is. And then I just sort of transcribe in my mind what's playing. But yeah, I do a massive amount of research, try to understand everything as best I can, get the big picture, which is, too big, obviously, and also doesn't serve the story. And then I use Hirschfeld, the cartoonist
Yeah.
Hirschfeld, famous for his caricatures of celebrities. I use him as sort of like how I sort of take my research and condense it down into the story. And that, he takes a person and he's drawing someone, and with like 3 or 4 specific brush strokes, you go, oh, Liza Minnelli. Of course, like
yeah.
what the essence is to that celebrity.
I think that's why you're so good. That's a big piece of it, and why the stuff you will. And this is interesting for people, when you're reading books. Sometimes you'll read writers, and then all of a sudden they just dump all their research in. You can just see it. It's supposed to be this very dramatic scene in, say, St. Patrick's Cathedral, and all of a sudden there's like 7 pages on the construction of St. Patrick's and everything they dug up in their research. I don't love that kind of writing, but I like to know. I like to learn some things, and you certainly do. Like, as I said, working on a Michael Crichton book, you learn a lot of things. But we don't just dump everything in there, And I think the way you're describing it is perfect.
Yeah, and it's readers are smart. Readers are really smart.
No. They're just the same as us. They're not that smart. We're all we're flawed. We're flawed.
We're all flawed. Yeah, we're all flawed. We're all.
But I go into the mirror every morning now, and I just look and I go, "You again?"
Exactly. You're still here. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
But
right.
readers, I really think like readers will get it. So if you get those 3 or 4 brushstrokes right, I think oftentimes if you're creating the world, if you're world building well enough, and if you get the essentials there, I think the reader will go with you and they'll fill it in on their own. And I really think also what isn't explicitly there, they also fill in with their own lived experience. I write ordinary people. I write everyday people. I don't write, Navy SEALs and space Martians and stuff. I write teachers and firefighters and accountants and flight attendants and pilots. And these are people we know, people that we are. And I think that people fill in the blanks, and they also put themselves in there. And I think that it
Mhm.
makes for a richer read when you're able to say, I know that person. I am
Mhm.
that person, or I know someone like
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
character.
Mhm. And also to be able to get people interested in a big cast very quickly. J.K. Rowling, that's one of her talents. She's really good at, new chapters. She introduces somebody and you're immediately interested in them, which is great. You use the word world building, which I first came across with in terms of science fiction and fantasy novels. So what do you mean with world building in this kind of where the world is pretty recognizable? What does that mean just in terms of your books?
That's a great question. I mean, it's still a world that doesn't exist. It's familiar to something that we know, but the town that I placed this in is a fictitious town, so I had to build
Uh-huh.
that from scratch. The
Hmm.
airline that I was
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
at, that airline doesn't exist. That
Yeah, of
flight
course
never.
it doesn't. You're not going to crash at Delta or United or you'd be in trouble.
I am not. I am not. That's a
Their publisher will not let you do that.
it's a completely fictitious airline. I actually did an event the other night and someone asked a question. And I thought, I don't know the answer. That's hysterical. The question was if you have movie deals for both of your first two books and the airline is the same in both of those books, would they legally be allowed to appear in both stories, even though they're separate and with separate everything? And I was like,
Oh, okay. You're
it was a great question. I was like, are you a lawyer and do you have the answer? Because I certainly
yeah.
don't. I don't know. Uh,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
but anyway, yeah, world building to me is that, it's this book is its own world. And even if it is something that looks familiar to something we know, it doesn't exist. I still have to build this. It still has to be a rich lived in environment with rich lived in characters that is their own world unto themselves. So it's not
Mhm.
in Narnia, it's not on Mars, it's not, there's no Hogwarts, but it's still, I don't know, it's still its
Do you
own thing.
ever see yourself somewhere along the way, maybe branching out and doing something totally different, like not literally a sci-fi, but something that you've never done before or thought about doing?
I don't know. I feel like I'm just sort of starting out.
Fantasy.
Yeah, I'm starting out in my career, so I don't know, but I feel like I mean, look at your career. I feel like most of the writers
Oh,
that
don't look at mine. I'm all over the lot. I've lost it at the.
But that's my point is most of the authors that I love, Michael Crichton's a great example, It's like ER is as different from Jurassic Park as different from Westworld, like Andromeda Strain, like they're all, I
It's
think
amazing. I know you're a Michael Crichton fan too, but I mean Jurassic Park. He's so good that he can actually make that feel like believable. That's so cool. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. We brought back all these dinosaurs and they're on this island. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
exactly.
great. That's a great talent. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, I don't know where it goes from here. This book was actually a big, departure for me. It's like I said, after the fifth page, the plane has crashed. The book does not take place on a plane or during the life of a single flight, which is how my first two books were. And that, it felt like a risk to me as a writer. I didn't know, can I do this? Can I do this if it's not on the plane? And on top of that, will my readers want it? Or am I just the flight attendant who writes plane thrillers? Is that all my readers want? So it felt
Yeah.
risky
You
to,
got to take control of yourself, I think. It's you're in. Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but yeah, I hope at some point you do a non-plain book. That's it. As long as it's exciting, people are going with you. I remember just a quick thing. After I was writing, nothing but thrillers, and I went into Little Brown and I said, "Well, I want to write this book, Suzanne's Diary, for Nicholas. So it's a love story and a romance, and whatever, and then the summer house." And they listened to the pitch. And during the pitch, the head of Larry Kirschbaum actually started crying when I described Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas. And then they said, okay, well, we're going to buy Summer House, but we're not going to buy Suzanne's Diary because it's not your brand. And I go, what? What do you mean it's not my brand? What's my brand? My brand is when people pick it up, whatever it is, the pages are going to turn themselves. So if it is a love story, that's going to be the pace of it. And then you decide whether you like love stories and whether you're going to trust me to tell a love story. But that's such as it is. I don't like to think of myself as a brand, but that's what people can expect from my books. And I forced them to do Suzanne's Diary for Nicholas, and it wound up, I think it's my third biggest book of all time of anything I've written. And so what do your fans want? Your fans, I think they just want to sit down and read the damn thing and go, "That was great. I love that." And sometimes you read something that you love, and all of a sudden you want to read everything in the world. And if you read two in a row that you don't, I don't mean yours, but just in general, suddenly you're not as interested in reading because you just read two bummers in a row, and it's like, they can't wait for the movie. So what's the where are we at with the movie? Is it moving along in a good way?
They're both moving along in a great way. It's really exciting. I always hesitate. I'm never sure what I'm allowed to say before somebody comes
Oh, yeah.
out the door.
No, well, if it's been released in Deadline or Variety, you're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah,
that's what I've learned. Yeah.
I can't believe that. I can't believe it's my third book. I can't believe the first two have movies. It's all just wild. They're moving forward. It's happening. It's pretty incredible. It's pretty
I remember
incredible.
when I went on the set for Kiss the Girls, it is kind of boring, but everybody was very nice. But I soon found out that on the movie set, the novelist rates somewhere below the caterer. They know why the caterer is there. But they're not quite sure why the novelist is there, At any rate, but it is fun. It is fun. In that case, Morgan Freeman and Ashley Judd, they spent so much time shooting in the woods. This is for Kiss the Girls, and she started calling it Kiss the Squirrels, which was funny.
That is fun.
What else do we have? Are the questions? Do you know the questions that people are asking or whatever?
Yeah, I see the Q&A box.
Okay. If you have questions, you can you can throw them out to us, and we'll try to answer them. Unless we don't like the question, and then we'll just throw out an answer that's irrelevant. That's one thing I learned about celebrity. When you go on TV, if you don't like the question, you say that's a really good question. It reminds me of something else, and you take it somewhere else. Somebody that would read anything that you write. Okay.
I got one.
Same with JP. Thank you very much. Whoever you are, we like you very much. We both like you.
Yeah.
That was a little pop-up.
Leanne Milligan asked a great question that I would love to know your answer to this too. She said, "What is your favorite part of writing?"
For me, it's the outline, believe it or not. I love writing. I love writing my outlines, 60, 70, 80 pages. For Along Came a Spider, when I decided I'm gonna everything that I do well, I'm gonna try to do that. And the things that I don't do well, I'm gonna try not to do it. And I wrote this 360-page outline, and I read it, and I said, that's kind of the book. I added to it, and that's where the short chapters came from, and the sort of colloquial storytelling. It's just very simple. And that's where the style that I use in most of the books that I do, that came from that very, very, very long outline.
So you wrote a 300, how long was the book? How long was that one when it was finished product? If the outline was
probably 4 something. I mean, I added to it, but I didn't add a whole lot. I didn't add a whole lot.
Wow. Wow, that's so interesting. Honestly, outlining is one of my favorite parts of it too, because I think, are you the same way where it's like, if I've got the concept and I need to know ahead of time if it's going to work, like that's the part where you're figuring out if it's going to work or not. It's kind of the most torturous, because it's like, why are these puzzle pieces not fitting? Because outline's kind of like completing a puzzle. Like
and your imagination is going crazy.
And then also things that you want to have work can't work or won't work, and you can't figure out why. So it's like,
what's the worst part for you? For me, it's endings.
Oh, really? That's the opposite.
Part of me is really okay.
Oh, that's the opposite for me. I think the ending, I love a good denouement. I love I love closure. I'm not a sucker for a happy ending, but I like things to be completed. That
doesn't mean people die at the end of this book, by the way. Don't feel that way. Don't feel that way.
No spoilers, no spoilers. It's just, I love endings. I love that sort of little button on the end. So that's honestly one of my favorite parts.
I like it when it's successful ultimately, but I find that for me, and I think this is true of some writers I know, you kind of like, you're rushing, you kind of want it to be over now. It's like,
Mm,
okay, I want it to be over now, and you're rushing more than you should, and whatever. This
yeah.
is me anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah. Endings might be my favorite. Endings and beginnings. I think it's sort of like that mid, especially with the type of books that I write. Sometimes, Act Two just sort of is
Oh
hard.
yeah. No, the middles are yes. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, there are an awful lot of writers that they have a really cool idea, and you go, "Oh, this is really cool, cool idea," and then the middle, they don't know what to do with it. They
exactly.
have no idea. It's like, oh, really cool idea, and I know where it ends. And oh my God, oh, there's like 150 pages in the middle, and I don't know what.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
and I call
also,
that like marching in time, where you're just kind of, and then readers don't want that. They
yeah.
want surprises and twists and whatever, and or whatever, depending on what it is, or keeping those characters interesting to people. Yeah.
Yeah, and when you write these types of books, it's like, one, how do you keep surprising the reader? How do you keep, them interested, but how do you not break the spell? That's always like my thing that I'm just keeping because if the reader puts the book down, if you've lost them for a second and they put it down, then they're probably not going to want to pick it back up. So every chapter, the beginning and the end of the chapters, I always go back and look at what's the first sentence and what's the last sentence, because if they're not hooked on that first sentence, and if they don't have to turn the page after the last sentence, then I'm not doing this right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Somebody asked other people out there, did they cry reading it? Do you ever cry writing any of your books?
I should have kept a tally of the number of boxes of Kleenex that I went through writing worst case scenario.
Uh-huh.
I didn't cry through that book. I sobbed hysterically through much of the book. I'm a crier just in general. I'm a big crier,
Uh-huh.
and that one I
I
think
am too. It's sickening at movies and stuff. It's so, and it can be a comedy or sitcom, and I'm like, oh,
like a
it's
baby.
awful,
It's a
awful,
it's
awful.
a good way to be. I like it. We
All
feel
right,
it.
okay.
Yeah, we're feelers. Yeah. So yes, I definitely cried through all my books, but especially through worst case scenario. Yeah.
I when I'm doing the rewrites, I will write at the head of chapters, be there, meaning that I really want to be in the scene. And if I'm writing it and I don't feel whatever it's supposed to be, if I don't feel the sadness in a certain scene that it's supposed to be very sad, or it's supposed to be romantic, or it's supposed to be really scary, if I don't feel it, I mean, the thing I almost like don't want to read any book where it starts out with some woman running through the woods being chased. Well, I don't know who the hell she
Right.
is. I don't know why I'm supposed to care at this stage. And oh my God, how many books have started with the woman running through the woods? Stop.
Yeah.
Don't write any more of those. Please, anybody that's watching, if you're a reader, don't write any more of those. The woman running through the woods and she gets caught, and then they cut and whatever. I don't know what happens after that, but I don't care.
Be there is such a good reminder. The one that I always remind, Shane always tells me, deliver the moment, which is kind of the same thing of
Uh-huh.
this is a moment. Books aren't the types of books we write are not about nothing happening. It's not about the day nothing happened. It's about the day something happened. Deliver that moment. Take your reader there, and don't let them go until it's over.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Yeah. Any
Yeah.
other questions out there?
Let's see. Um Oh, that's a good question from Nancy. I'm interested your take on this too, as we're both outliners. Do you know the endings of your books when you start them?
I think I do, but I usually don't. I think because stuff happens. You'll get some character, and you were going to knock him off. And I do this. I'm doing a book now, and there was a character I was going to kill. And I go, no, not kill. I will not kill this character. Where this is supposed to happen on page 280 or something. I can't do this. I like this character too much. Or a villain who winds up living to go to the next book.
Right.
So yeah, things change, and that also makes it fun. The fact that it can change for
Even with
me, for
Yeah,
me.
even with the extensive outline, the best laid plans go awry. I always find that even if I know exactly what's going to happen, new problems are going to pop up. And also too, new logic issues that you didn't think of when you were writing the outline. Things are always changing. I don't I didn't I know the end of my books by the end of the outline. I definitely don't start. When I wrote Falling, the beginning was the only thing that I had. The concept of falling, which was, a pilot's told mid-flight that his family's been kidnapped and that if he doesn't crash the plane, they'll be killed. What does he do? That was the only thing that I had. And it's one of the driving forces for finishing that book was I needed to know the ending, and I didn't have an
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until I
Oh, you
wrote
got to have the. And do you ever go on where you don't have the ending, or
the
think
fine.
you at least have the ending? Yeah.
No, I had
Oh,
no
you didn't.
idea.
Okay. All right.
No,
Uh-huh.
I needed the answer to that question. What does he do? I needed the answer to that question and I didn't have it. And me writing that book was figuring out what the answer to that question is for me because there is no answer to that question. How do you choose between your family and, the people on the plane that are in your care? It's an impossible question. And how do you answer it? And so I wrote the book to figure out what that answer was. So I had
Uh-huh.
no
Uh-huh.
idea
Uh-huh.
of that.
Uh-huh. Okay. All right. Very brave.
Yeah. But again, remember that one took me like, nearly 40 drafts and years to write. So again, don't
Yeah,
recommend that.
I recommend outlines, even if you change it a lot. It's very, very useful, and it will save you a lot of time and heartache and stress and whatever, sadness, tears,
Yeah.
drinks, liquor, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Grace asked a really good question too. TJ, did you have imposter syndrome while you were writing and submitting your first novel? And if you did, is there anything you did to overcome the imposter syndrome and or self-doubt? I'm going to answer that and say that the imposter syndrome was not dropped at the end of the first novel. Like I'm sitting here on a Zoom with Jim Patterson, like the imposter syndrome is still live and well. I always feel like I'm tricking someone somehow to have gotten here. And it's getting over it, I think, is not letting it be the only voice in the room. The self-doubt is there, but it can't be the loudest voice. There has to be
Hmm.
other voices in your head
Uh-huh.
that are telling you, "It's okay, you can do this."
Yeah,
And
that's a good way that's a good way. Yeah.
yeah,
Or just recognizing you're a human being, you have your strengths and weaknesses, and that's fine. That's who I am. There's that thing, just that the cliche, but it's a cliche that comes out of reality, which is, being comfortable in your own shoes and whatever. And you
yeah,
just you accept what you're good at, you accept what you're not as good at, and that's okay.
yeah.
I'm not an imposter. I'm good at certain things. I'm not so good at other things.
Exactly, and I think too, it's understanding. I think I finally accepted that it's not going to ever fully go away, and I think that that's an easy way to talk yourself out of doing something that you want to because you're scared or because it could go bad or because of imposter syndrome, and I think
Hmm.
knowing that, like, people, I remember when my first book came out and I was terrified and I remember Googling imposter syndrome and trying to figure out different ways for me to cope with it because it was really real and it was really
Yeah.
daunting. And I
Yeah.
remember reading a thing that said that Maya Angelou and Michelle Obama all feel imposter syndrome. And it's like
Mm.
when you look and see people like that who are
Yeah.
saying they feel it, it's like, okay, maybe we shouldn't be letting this voice have as much power as we're letting it have, because that's
Yeah.
insane that Maya Angelou would feel imposter syndrome. So
Yeah. What
I
I
think,
always try to do with our son is to get him to feel comfortable with his core and not to get too overboard on. And I think this is one of the sometimes people feel a little phony to their real selves in that they've invested a little too much in the way they dress or the car that they drive, or in terms of that's not really who they are, but it's that with or a super workout thing. And all those things are fine up to a point, but if that becomes your sense of who you are, it's not who you are. And I think you kind of know that. And I think that's why maybe people get a little neurotic about that whole thing of, well, that this isn't really me. And I only have three people who know who I am, yeah, I have nobody. No, my wife knows who I am, I think. And she stays with me. That's so nice.
it's probably because
My line about Sue is if Sue ever leaves me, I'm going with her.
it's
So,
probably because she stays with you because she knows who you are. And I think personally that's one of the unexpected blessings of not getting my big break until when I did. Like I didn't get my mid break
you
until
act like you're 70 years old. Come on. You
But
did get
well, no,
you got that big break at a nice time, you know.
I don't act like this, but society does, and all the cues that we're given is that, if you don't make your break by the time you're in your early 20s, then it's just not going to happen for you. And that's the message that we're told. And I just ignored it and kept going. And the
Yeah.
blessing of not getting it until I was, in my mid 30s is that I knew who I was, and I had a developed relationship with the world and with myself and with my family and friends. And I had that foundation that when the rest of this insanity came up and all of these blessings started happening, I still felt like me because I knew who I was. Like you're saying, I knew who I was. And the rest of it is just blessing upon blessing to a life that was already great. And so it's all, I don't know, maybe, as you get older, you just have a different perspective of, like you're saying, like, sure, cars are nice and all of those things are cool, but that's not what
That's not who you
ultimately,
are. Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you
I don't
are.
think anyway. Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, so here is this wonderful book. And don't forget, you should have more than one copy because you might lose the copy or something. And you probably have friends who you could and they need their own copy. So, and recommending is if you like the book and you will, recommending it to people is nice. And then the holidays will come eventually. So this is a nice holiday book. And, you always, and everybody out there knows people that have birthdays, everybody. So anyway, all sorts of good stuff. This has been great. I think we're in good shape now to leave the meeting. It says leave the meeting up there.
Well, they're kicking us
Uh,
out. The lights are coming up. They're kicking us out.
Are they? Okay.
I
All
don't
right. Okay.
know.
I knew you weren't in Phoenix. I saw that window. I said, "No, I don't think that could be Phoenix."
Yep,
So anyway.
I'm on tour, so it's
Oh, okay. Oh, that's
oh,
right. Your tour. Oh
yeah.
my God. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But where are you tomorrow? Where are you today? New York?
I'm in New York today. Tomorrow I go, let's see if I can remember this. I go
Jersey?
tomorrow, I go
Thunder Road? Thunder Road
Providence.
Books?
No,
Providence.
no, Books on the Square, and I'll actually be in conversation with Don Winslow tomorrow in Providence, which is
Oh, really? Oh,
extremely,
cool. Hey,
yeah.
our son went to Brown, so we love Providence.
Oh, it's
So
great. I went there
it
last year for
is.
the first time, and it's just a beautiful town.
It
Just
is.
beautiful. Yeah.
It's a very cool town because it's state capital and it's a college town and there's a lot of what it was originally. It's one of those great towns where you feel what it was and you feel what it's become. And I love towns like that. Vancouver's a little that way to me too. Santa Fe is a little that way. At any rate. All right. So this has been great. I think we're good. I don't know if we have somebody, a cat herder here or somebody, whoever takes care of this thing, but
I'm just
uh
thank you to everybody who joined us. That's on there. Thank you. This was
I don't know
wonderful.
what those little hearts floating are, but I like that. That's good. Whoever sends the hearts. Thank you so
Hey, there we
much.
go. Thumbs up.
Yeah. Oh, and thumbs. And this is so cool. All right. Thank you so much. And we survived without our questions somehow. Thank you, everybody. This is great. And this book is it's great. It's really good. All of Tori's books are great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate this. Take
Bye
care.
bye.